Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku was killed in a vicious villain attack. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. At the early age of 5, Midoriya Izuku knows how challenging life can be. He had a quirk assessment at the hospital where he was told by his doctor that he will never have a quirk, after which his father left him and his mother. The man never stepped foot back into their home again. Perhaps it's better this way. The boy would often think to himself instead of wishing for the man to have been there through his childhood. On top of this, his childhood best friend Bakugo Katsuki treats him like a piece of trash on the side of the street. He will beat on and kick Midoriya until he is bloody and bruised everywhere that is easily covered with clothing. After which, Bakugo will toss him to the side for someone else to come along and pick up. Midoriya flinches at just the excruciating thought of the other boy's wrath. He had tried going to his teachers about the abuse from the other students after his mother had taught him how to handle bullies who were stronger than him, but often the teachers would tell him that he was the real issue, and that if he didn't make himself appear so weak the other kids wouldn't have any reason to pick on him. However, Midoriya does have one bright side to life. His mother, a kind woman who loves and cares for the boy unconditionally. She is his shining hope in a world that has given up on him, and her name is Midoriya Inko. The boy would do anything to protect his mother. This train of thought is what started Midoriya's dream to become a hero. He wanted to become someone who can protect her from all the harm the world brings. There is one other idol that Midoriya admires in this hellish world he lives in. He may never have met his idol in person, but Japan's #1 hero, All Might, is simply too inspiring for the boy not to look up to. The man in question's debut brought about a new sense of hope to a whole generation of hero hopefuls. Midoriya looks up to the man as a role model and the real definition of a hero. One night after a long school day, Midoriya sat down at his mother's home computer while she cooked dinner. That day had been full of teasing from all the other kids, and Bakugo using his quirk against the green net for the first time during a brutal beating on the playground. Inko turned on All Might's debut video for the boy to watch, as it had always worked in the past to bring a smile to his face. Unfortunately, he couldn't help but think of the mean comments the other kids had made. "Quirkless freak," one called out. "You're so gross," someone exclaimed. "I hope he isn't contagious." Another whispered, "You're a complete idiot if you think you can be a hero like All Might without a quirk." Bakugo proclaimed right before shoving Midoriya to the ground. "If anyone has a shot at being as great a hero as him, it's me. You hear?" Midoriya cried big, muffled sobs. "Can I really be like All Might without a quirk? Maybe Kaken is right. I might not be cut out to be a hero." Midoriya thought as he watched his favorite hero raise his fist high and shout, "I am here," again and again. The video played on loop for what felt like hours as he wept, unsure of what goals he should reach towards, if any. When Inko opened the door to grab her son for dinner, she hesitated and gazed across the room at her wide, teary-eyed son. He moved slowly, anxiously shaking in the seat as he spun around to face his mother. He pointed to the pause screen where All Might stood, a symbol of peace atop a heaping pile of rubbish. "Can I be a H-hero too?" he asked timidly between sobs. Inko rushed to her child's side, embracing him in a mother's warmth. How she hated to see such a look on her son's adorable face. She tried to comfort him, but it didn't seem like enough, as he never did embrace her back. "I'm sorry, Izuku," she cried. "I'm so sorry." From that day on, Midoriya had one goal in life: to meet All Might and ask if he has what it takes to become a hero. Just outside the front doors of Aldera Junior High, Izuku sits by himself for lunch. In his 15 years of life, not once has Kaken let him keep a single friend. If they weren't deterred by Izuku's quirklessness, then Kaken made sure to give them a good reason to keep their distance from him. He picks at his rice ball and sighs. "I can't believe I missed Slugger's takedown this morning," he mumbles, not even realizing. "I would have loved to see the baseball hero in action for myself." Defeatedly, he takes a bite of the creamy rice ball and slumps down against the concrete wall. It can't be good for his spine, but frankly, he doesn't care. It's nothing in comparison to the searing burn he received from Kaken that morning before second PRD. The semi-raw flesh pulls at every movement from his uniform jacket. The pain has him biting at his bottom lip. To distract himself from the pain, he shuts his eyes and imagines what Slugger's takedown might have been like. I wonder if he used his home run move. It sounded like the villains were traveling by car, so perhaps he used it to pop a tire. Is that even possible? I guess it would depend on whether the car was coming toward him or not. The bell rang from inside the building, alerting students that lunch was officially over and to make their ways to class. Izuku stares up into the sky a second longer before picking himself up and dragging himself back into the dreadful building for afternoon classes. Oi, dipshit. Izuku freezes halfway down the aisle to his seat. He ended up being a little early to class, possibly giving Kaken the time to say something degrading. I've got to stop making myself a target. He stares intensely at the ground in front of him, forcing himself to not tremble in fear of the blonde classmate. Let me borrow your notes from English. Kaken states aggressively, leaving no room for argument. Izuku turns around to show Kaken that he's heard him and to dig for the notes in question out of his backpack. He really doesn't want another bruise today. Besides, he's already copied the notes into a binder for safekeeping in case someone were to mess up his original ones. When he turns around, he sees Kaken's glaring red eyes turn from his friend to Izuku.
Crap.
He wasn't even talking to me.
Okay.
It's okay, be cool, just turn back around. And, you got a problem, nerd? Kaken sneers at him. One of his friends chime. He thought you'd want to borrow his useless notes. I bet he doesn't even know how to take them properly. Hell, let me see your notes too, Deku. I want to make sure. You're not missing any information. Kaken commands, using Izuku's least favorite nickname. Izuku hesitates a moment too long and makes the mistake of peering into Kaken's crimson eyes. Didn't you hear me? I said show me your shitty notes, Deku. He shouts, swiftly pushing up from his desk and grabbing Izuku by the collar of his shirt. Why, yes, Kaken. He fumbles with that ridiculous stutter of his in a vain attempt to calm the enraged blonde. Kaken throws him to the floor and tears Izuku's bag away from him. He swiftly opens the zipper, dumping all the bag's contents onto the floor. He crouches down, grabs the notebook in question, and quickly schemes through it in front of the terrified Greenette. This garbage is completely wrong. He shouts aloud, looking up at Izuku. He sneers at Izuku with those raging eyes before a deafening explosion fills the classroom. A few seconds pass as the blonde lingers there glaring at Izuku. He feels faint, thinking of what Kaken might do next. Then, the bell rings, ending this living nightmare. Lucky you, I guess. Don't antagonize me next time, nerd, and maybe I might let you off the hook. Kaken smirks cockily before standing up and tossing the book into Izuku's face. Izuku quickly scoops up all his things and shakingly carries them back to his seat to organize them into his backpack. The notebook isn't completely lost, but several pages on both sides of the book were damaged by the fiery blast of heat. So much for trying to avoid another confrontation before school's even out. Izuku is the first one out of the classroom door when the final bell rings, signaling the end of the school day. He never lingers around in fear that someone might be lurking around the school waiting to pummel him before he can make it home. He walks alone on the busy Mizutofu main streets. Cars honk at each other in the dense traffic, and strangers crowd stoplights awaiting the signal to cross safely. One lady he passes is talking obnoxiously loud on the phone about some guy she met at a club last night. The streets become narrower, but less packed as he gets closer to home. He can see the apartment complex a few blocks down straight in front of him. He takes to looking at the pavement below his feet. Something about watching his destination approach makes it feel further away than it actually is, but having it in sight makes him want that comfort all the more. With no one around, the streets feel calmer to him. A soft wind blows the spring air against his cheek, and he feels calmer. Home is his safe place. Away from bullies, away from teachers, away from his loneliness. Inko is the only person he needs in life. With her, he feels safe, loved. She never looks down on him for his quirklessness and always treats him as an equal. He only wishes she believed he could become a hero too, but he supposes she is his mother and is supposed to worry for his well-being. He loves her for what she has done for him, and that will never change. He reaches the apartment's outdoor stairway and climbs to the second story. He unlocks the front door to the apartment. His shoulders sag in relief as he enters the apartment. It's small, but it's cozy and provides a place for him to feel comfortable. Leaving his shoes at the door, Izuku walks to his room and sets his school supplies at the end of his desk. He pulls out a worn notebook labeled Hero Analysis for the Future Volume 13 and begins a new page on Slugger as he pulls up footage of the hero's fight that morning. Hero name: Baseball Hero. Slugger.
Quirk.
Pitch: allows the user to aim handheld sports ball perfectly on target. Range varies depending on the material, weight, size, and condition of the ball. Quirk theories questions. Number 1. Is there an underlying strength boost from the quirk? If yes, does it only apply to the throwing of sports ball, or are the user's punches, etc. also stronger? Number 2. Can the user throw any object with more accuracy, or does it only apply to sports ball? Number 3. Does the user have to learn pitching techniques, or does it come naturally? Number 4. Do the user's tosses have to abide by the sports rules? If yes, does that mean the user can't toss soccer ball? Number 5. Can the user throw more than one ball at a time with the same accuracy? If yes, then having a capture net tied around some would be beneficial to capturing villains without causing injuries. Strengths. Number 1. The user can throw ball with incredibly powerful force. Number 1. Makes it easy to keep an opponent from running away. Weaknesses. Number 1. The user is exposed in close combat situations. Number 2. The user could easily run out of ammo due to an inability to carry more than a few ball around. Overall analysis. The user is well suited to sports, the best being baseball. The quirk is well suited to support the user in a professional sports career. However, as a hero's quirk, it hinders the user's ability to achieve higher goals such as the top 100 pros. It's best suited for limelight sidekick work to aid in capturing fleeing villains. As a villain, the quirk has many advantages, the top including fatal injuries to enemies, destruction of material up to a thin sheet of aluminum, and long-range attack power. Izuku takes a long look over his analysis, deeming it of good status, before closing the notebook and looking around his room at all his hero merch. He glances the time on the corner of his computer screen. 5:27. Mom won't be home for another half hour. Taking that into consideration, he puts his hero analysis notebook away and pulls out his burnt English notebook. He should copy it down into a new notebook for school. He sits there for the next half hour copying notes into a new notebook until his mother comes home from her shift as a nurse in the Mizutofu General Hospital. "I'm home, Izuku." She greets him from the front door. Izuku sets his notebook aside and gets up to greet his mother in the hallway. "Welcome home," he smiles. "What do you think about takoyaki for dinner?" "I was on my way home, and it just sounded delicious." "Sounds good to me." Izuku loves his mother's cooking. "Would you mind helping me set up, dear?"
she asks.
"Not at all." Izuku goes to bed that night with a belly full of his mother's amazing cooking and a new hero in his analysis notebook. He dreads school in the morning, but he'll survive it like always. He scrolls through some hero forums until he falls asleep. "Izuku, you better wake up if you want to be on time for school." His mother calls from the kitchen. "Breakfast is ready whenever you're dressed." The boy groggily crawls his way out from the covers to get changed. The idea of school makes him nauseous, but the smell of his mother's cooking makes his mouth water. He puts very little effort into his uniform, knowing already that it will get messed up later by Kaken and his lackeys. Izuku pulls out a seat at the table and eats his breakfast before kissing Inko's forehead goodbye and heading out to school. "I love you, Izuku. Be careful," she calls after him. "I will love you too,"
he responds.
The second he pulls the door shut, tension fills every fiber of his being. Outside of the house, he is constantly aware of the danger that surrounds him. He decidedly takes a different route to school today, one that goes underneath the bridge to avoid the possibility of passing by Kaken's house as he leaves for school. Once he's at school, the day goes by normally. Well, as normally as Izuku has always known it to be. He gets roughed up at lunch by some upperclassmen who force him to cough up lunch money. Resourcefully, Izuku hides the fact that he brings his own lunches and gives them the $3 he has on him instead. Izuku finds it impressive that the first time he runs into Kaken outside of class is after school. Unfortunately, he was too focused on recopying his English notes from yesterday and forgot to pack up his things before the bell rang. So by the time he was packed up and ready to leave, it was only Izuku, Kaken, and a few of his lackeys left in the classroom. The blonde sends an explosion into Izuku's chest, knocking him over. The boy's hero analysis notebook is knocked out of his bag, falling onto the floor. He had put it in his backpack that morning as an afterthought when new ideas on one of the heroes and it came to mind. He added a few things to their page at lunch and forgot all about the notebook until now. What's this? Kaken kicks the notebook around to read the title. Hero Analysis for the Future Volume 13. He reads aloud. How idiotic, one of the lackeys chimes in. I thought you'd given up on that dream already. Kaken growls. How many times do I have to beat it into you before you understand, huh? I can explain dash. Izuku tries, but it's too late. Kaken approaches, and Izuku retreats backward on his hands until he hits the wall behind him with the back of his head. A solid kick from Kaken's heel lands on Izuku's side, causing his breath to hitch. Another kick follows, and another, and another, and another until Izuku is forced to turn away onto his hands and knees, gasping desperately for air as spit falls from the corners of his mouth. Heh. That oughta finally teach you your place, Deku, Kaken says with such revulsion Izuku thinks Kaken is going to kill him right then and there. He hears Kaken pick up his notebook from the floor before an explosion rings out in the small classroom. This isn't much use to you anyways, Kaken casually says before tossing it out the window. A faint splash can be heard below. The blonde begins to back off and almost leaves the room with his two lackeys, but he quickly stops and turns back around. You know, Kaken starts, if you really want to be a hero so bad there might be another way. Just pray for a quirk in your next life, and take a swan dive off the roof of the building. Pure, unfiltered rage fills Izuku's heart. How could he say something like that so casually? Doesn't he know what repercussions those words could hold? It could endanger his future career as a pro-hero even. For the first time, Izuku thinks about standing up to Kaken's actions, but when he whips his head around, Kaken sets off a blast in his palm as a warning to the boy still gasping for air on the floor. All fight leaves Izuku as the three of them walk out of the room. Fear and adrenaline keep Izuku in place on the floor. He sits there alone for about half an hour, leaning heavily against the cement wall, clenching at his chest and crying silently. When his ears and heart feel like they're going to explode from the pain, he lets out a single racking sob before standing up and wiping at his tears. I should head home. They're probably out of the vicinity by now. He struggles his way down the stairs of the school and finds his notebook in the fish pond right outside of the school. Hey, you don't belong in there, he mumbles, looking at the notebook in defeat. Get away, it's not food, he shoos at the koi fish. He carries the soaked book in his hand to prevent the water from ruining his other school supplies and takes the long way home on the same path from that morning. As much as his ribs protest the long walk, he prefers it over the possibility of running into Kaken again. There's almost no one on this path home because it's all back streets, but Izuku finds it calmer than the crowded streets right now. The quiet background noise of daily life is his personal soundtrack for the walk home. AC units rumble to life. His shoes scrape against the sidewalk every few steps. The sounds of annoyed traffic are distant and muffled. A grate scrapes open. The weight a grate what's? You'll make the perfect skin suit. The slimy sewer sludge villain appears from out of the open grate hole underneath the bridge. He makes a beeline for Izuku, and the latter is unable to react before the villain sludge is filling in his nose and mouth, blocking all of Izuku's oxygen intake. The sludge is thick and foul-tasting. The villain came from the sewage system, so he's probably covered in fecal matter.
Disgusting,
Izuku thinks. Izuku claws at his own throat, even shoving a hand inside his own mouth to try and block the sludge from pouring in. The villain scolds. Izuku tries to scream and pull and kick, but all he can do is GG on the sludge and succumb to this fate. After about a minute, his vision begins to fade. Is this the end? Tears stream down his face as he resists the villain one last time, reaching out to try and grab an object to pry himself free. Slowly, he stops thinking and his vision disappears into nothingness. Hey, wake up. Hey, Dash. Izuku's eyes open slowly. The first thing he notices are his ribs. They ache worse than before. It's a burning sensation very different from Kaken's quirk. Then he recognizes a faint tapping motion on the side of his cheek. "Iwai, where'd the villain go?" he mumbles, squinting against the harsh sunlight. "Thought we lost you." "There," a booming voice exclaims. "Wait, I've heard this voice somewhere." "All Might?" he asks, dazed. "The one and only. All Might, all freaking might," exclaims. Izuku shoots up like a rocket. "Awawa, how but UWHAATT." Izuku freaks out. This is insane. "Bibi, but where did the villain go?" "Sorry to cause you any trouble, young man, but do not fear, for I am here. I have safely secured the slimy villain in these plastic bottles." All Might says, showing off the soda bottles in his cargo pants pockets. "Oh my gosh. All Might, I have a question to ask Dash." "No need, young man. I've already signed that notebook you were carrying." Izuku looks at his hero analysis notebook on the ground next to him. He reaches for it and flips through, finding All Might's signature on a blank page. No way, he already signed it. If that's all, I'll be taking my leave. I've got to get this villain into custody. WW8. I still have a question. Izuku tries to call out to the #1 hero, but the man is getting into a stance to leap away. Very rationally, Izuku does the only thing you can do when your favorite idol is about to leave. He clings to All Might's leg right as the hero leaps 100 feet into the air. "What the kid?" All Might shouts at Izuku. "I have a question for you, All Might." Izuku manages to say, through the wind, "Let go. I love my fans, but this is too much." He tries to shake Izuku off his leg, but the boy has the grip of a stray cat stuck in a tree. "I can't let go now, or I'll die," Izuku shouts. "Oh, good point. Hang on then." The pro hero lands atop a nearby roof roughly 7 stories high. Izuku lets the man go and guiltily backs away. "I am sorry, All Might. It's just..." He nervously chews at his bottom lip, wondering how he should ask his lifelong question. The hero briskly turns away. "You can ask someone inside that door over there to show you the way down from here, so I'll be taking my leave now," the hero says, stretching into position to take off again. "But I still need to ask him if... can I become a hero even without a quirk?" Izuku blurts with his eyes shut tight. He doesn't want to see All Might's face until everything is out in the open. "Everyone always says I'm a quirkless loser, and nobody, BB, but my biggest dream is to become a hero. I want to save people with a smile on my face, just like you, All Might." "Kid, I dash," the hero pauses, clenching his abdomen, then whispers to himself, "Not here. Please, All Might, tell me the truth. Do you think I have what it takes to become a hero like you?" Izuku slowly opens his eyes. The rooftop is filled with smoke. Izuku looks around frantically, thinking the hero might have taken off without answering his question. When the smoke fades, there is a scrappy blonde man who vaguely resembles All Might left standing where the pro was originally. Hold on, where's All Might? There's no way you're... "It's true. Look, kid," the man says, sitting down against the short railing. "Some villains just can't be beaten without powers. As a hero, you'd be risking your life to fight against villains you can't beat." "I can't. But what if..." All Might lifts up the side of his shirt, exposing a swirl of misshaped bruising to the boy. "You see this? It's from a major fight I had about 5 years ago. Every day I grow a little weaker because of it. I'm now reduced to a mere 3 hours of my buff hero form a day. So no, I don't believe you can become a hero without a quirk. At least, not one who will survive more than a year on active duty. You could definitely become a cop, supporting real heroes from the sideline." Izuku watches in shock as his idol slowly stands back up. "But I could train. I could. I wish you luck, kid." And with that, the hero flies off, leaving a distraught, quirkless 15-year-old stranded on a rooftop alone. "But I've come so far," his voice cracks as he expresses his broken heart to the empty rooftop. A seemingly endless pain from years of bottled-up emotions builds in his chest, crushing his sides and pounding against his skull, trying to break free, but he refuses to let the emotion break out just yet. A single tear rolls down his face, splattering onto the concrete. He stares at the droplet silently, wondering if it holds all the answers he's been looking for. What did I do to deserve this cruel fate? What am I supposed to do now? Everyone thinks I can't be a hero. Maybe they're right. I am pretty useless, aren't I? I clung to All Might just to get an answer. So how can I expect to fight real villains who will be coming at me with intent to kill? His thoughts spiral downward, piercing deep wounds into his already scarred heart. Words he's heard thousands of times before take over his rational ones. I'm so sorry, Izuku. You're such a Deku. You quirkless freak. You'll never be a hero. He's such a loser. Useless Deku. Idiot. Worthless good-for-nothing nerd. One thought nearly brings him to his knees in agony. Pray that you'll be born with a quirk in your next life, and take a swan dive off the roof of the building. He'll sadly admit the thought had crossed his mind a few times over the years. He'd never considered it a possibility, but now, he looks across the empty rooftop, and for some reason all his negative thoughts are replaced by one single thought. That railing is pretty short, I'd be simple to climb onto the other side. His legs tremble as he slowly makes his way across the roof. He runs a hand over the warm handrail that's been sitting in the afternoon heat. It feels inviting and comforting, somewhat like his mother's hugs. He knows it's wrong to be over here. He should leave through the door like All Might suggested, but he's caught sight of the pavement that seems so far below. It reminds him of walking down the street to his house. He can't wait to get there, but the distance feels nauseating. He can't pry his teary eyes from the ground. A single tear rolls down his face, splattering onto the concrete. Take a swan dive of the roof of the building. Swans partake in a ritual when their love dies. Known as a swan dive, where the beautiful bird will soar as high as it can, then plummet downward until it reaches the ground. Before Izuku can rationalize his thoughts, he's climbed onto the other side of the rails. He's not ready to go, but what is left for him here? No one believes in him. No one besides his mother even cares if he lives or dies. He gently closes his eyes, causing more tears to fall. Leaning into the emptiness right in front of him feels thrilling. Unlike being born quirkless, or not having the requirements to become a pro-hero, this is something Izuku gets to decide for himself.
To live or die.
He understands now why suicide is so common amongst the quirkless community. Here on the edge of death, there are no rules, no expectations or judgment. Only a decision for him to make. He takes a very unsteady breath and looks out at where the city and skyline meet. I'm so sorry, Mom. He barely even whispers to the spring air. The wind surrounds him, making his outfit and hair flap behind him. The tears stop falling, and a heart-shattering sound is created when his body collides with the concrete like a teardrop. Everything feels wrong. It's too quiet, and the pain he feels is so unbearable that it almost makes it feel okay. Hang in there, kid, it's gonna be okay. A gruff voice says to him. Who? You better not die on me. It's my day off, you know. An attempt at sarcasm that goes undetected as the man puts pressure on his weakening body. Sorry. He slurs. The taste of copper coats his tongue. Wait, kid, I didn't cheat. Just hang on, I dash. It's hard to see through the blood and tears in his eyes, but the homeless-looking man hovering over him looks distressed. Okay, I W on this. He tries to comfort the guy. Why? The man looks ready to cry for Izuku. That's a first. Though I suppose he doesn't know I'm quirkless, or else he probably would have just walked by like nothing happened. He shouldn't worry about a useless Deku like me. Sorry. T2 Ave BB bothered you on Waya Day officer. Izuku tries to smile, but it must not work because the man's face twists in horror. At least I tried. Izuku's eyelids feel heavy, and he makes no effort to keep them open. The man's soothing voice soon disappears from his mind.
Sheet.
Please, kid Ju dash. Zu dash.
Is you.
Sieperendower. Ayaku seyo me? Izuku. Where am I? Is this a hospital? It's okay, Izuku. Your parents are on their way, all right? How long was I unconscious for? I don't feel pain anywhere.
Weird.
How are you feeling, sweetie? Does anything hurt? The lady that's been talking to him laughs a little dryly. You gave us a fright, you know. Sorry, Izuku hazily slurs. Nothing to apologize for, dearie. You just had a minor fainting spell. It's no biggie. Minor? Fainting spell. I thought I jumped off that roof. Does she not know what happened? Izuku's eyes begin to adjust to the bright lighting. He takes in his surroundings and notices that there is a large number of kids around the room. The woman is supporting his weight and sitting on the ground beside him. He feels like everything around him is bigger than normal, but that's probably just his imagination talking. He did take quite the fall. Another woman is trying to redirect the kids in the room somewhere else, and there are craft supplies on a few small round tables nearby. How long have I been you?
He asks.
Just a few seconds, sweetie. Nothing to worry about, I promise. Where we? Why are there so many kids around? Do you not know where you are? She asks concernedly. He shakes his head, which ends up being the wrong move. It sends a pang through his skull like a bad headache. The lady's eyebrows crease in concern too. His best guess would be that they're at a hospital, but he doubts they'd let this many kids see a random patient who tried to take their own life. On top of that, there are no doctors around from what he can tell, and no medical supplies in sight. That's okay, Izuku, take your time. Your parents will be here shortly to get you okay.
What?
Mom can't see me like this. She doesn't need to be worrying about me. She has enough on her plate already. Izuku tries to stand himself up, but it increases the pain in his head and causes him to fall forward into the kind woman's arms. He blacks out instantly from the sudden rush to his head. This time when he wakes up, he can hear the steady beep of a heart monitor. Okay, this time I'm definitely in the hospital.
Right?
He questions his judgment. He slowly opens his eyes and takes in the sterile-looking room.
Yup.
He thinks after locating and confirming a heart monitor. He spots another person in the room. Within seconds he realizes it's his mother sitting on a visitor's chair, but she looks so young. He thinks,
Oh.
Izuku baby, how are you feeling? She rushes to his side, quickly wiping at some stray tears. You don't feel dizzy again, do you? Mom, I'm Dash. He starts to tear up. I am sorry. I didn't, Dash, he sniffles. I didn't mean for this to happen. Izuku, it's okay, baby. You didn't do it on purpose. Nobody expects to pass out in the middle of arts and crafts. She comforts him with a little giggle and a pat on the head. The doctor said you're all good too. Just a minor hiccup, nothing to worry about, okay? Izuku can't quite wrap his head around what's happening, but something is wrong here. He clearly remembers jumping from that roof, but weirdly, he doesn't feel any sort of injuries. He takes a second to look down at his body, wondering why he's not in any pain. He can't believe what he sees when he does. Flipping his hand back and forth a few times, he finds that he's in a kid's body. That explains why he had woken up surrounded by other kids earlier. But wait, his mom is here, and they'd called him Izuku, so does that mean that he's in his body? Did he go back in time? It would make sense considering his mother looks younger too. That must be what happened, but why? This is too weird. Moments ago, he was walking off the side of a 7-story building, and the next he's in his past? A quirk. The thought forms out loud. He misses the worried glance that his mother sends his way. He's too deep in thought, and his actions probably seem very strange coming from her little boy. That would explain why everything is different. Someone's quirk must have sent me into the past. But whose quirk would have?
Oh.
That guy that was trying to save me after I jumped. It must have been his quirk. Izuku ponders the idea for a few minutes, wondering what the specifics of the quirk might be, but it's hard to get an idea from the little amount of knowledge he's gathered. Before he knows it, a doctor comes into the room with another burly man. His hair is a rich brown color that pairs well with his pale blue eyes. The stranger looks at Izuku while the doctor speaks.
Good
afternoon, young man. I'm glad to see you doing better. My name is Dr. Shumori. I'm Midoria Izuku. He greets. Well, Izuku, do you know what happened earlier during class today? The doctor asks in a baby voice.
Do you?
Izuku thinks a little sarcastically but restrains himself from rolling his eyes at the man. Remember, he thinks I'm a little kid. Izuku reminds himself. Izuku just shakes his head in response. He's gathered that he passed out, but would rather the doctor explain it to him. That's alright, I know it can be kind of scary not knowing what happened. The doctor comforts him before explaining his ideas on what occurred. Well, you fainted during class today. It's kind of like instantly falling asleep out of nowhere. Sometimes it can be concerning when you faint, so we did some tests on you while you were sleeping. I hope that's okay with you. It's a rhetorical question posed to make Izuku feel better. Either way, he nods, agreeing with the doctor. The man continues with the test results. All your tests were completely normal and healthy, so there is nothing for you to worry about. However, we did a few extra tests to figure out what the cause was. Seeing as it's almost your 5th birthday, we decided to run a few tests for quirks. Izuku's eyes darken slightly at the mention of quirk tests. This must be a few weeks before we found out I'm quirkless. Our tests show that the reason you passed out earlier was due to the development of your quirk. The doctor beams. Everything goes silent in the room. Izuku's eyes linger on the doctor. A quirk? But I'm quirkless. Something must be wrong with their tests. It can't be right. He looks at the man standing beside the doctor. He feels so familiar to Izuku, but he can't place why that is. The doctor delves into the hospital's theories as to what Izuku's quirk might be. He says that it has something to do with Izuku's mental capabilities, which is why its development caused Izuku to pass out. The quirk is most likely a form of intelligence quirk, providing Izuku with better mental capabilities. Unfortunately, intelligence quirks are one of the hardest to identify because they can't be accurately tested with regular quirk testing. Oftentimes, with emitter-type quirks, the doctors can run blood tests to find the quirk's activation requirements by comparing them to the parents. Intelligence quirks are a little different, though. They involve the brain's function, which can only be proven with standardized testing or a behavioral change that comes with the rapid growth of knowledge about things or certain subjects. When the doctor leaves, Izuku is caught up in his thoughts. He comes to his own conclusion that the man who must have sent him back in time is also the reason Izuku passed out. He thinks the doctor's test is probably inaccurate simply because he has the mental capacity of a 15-year-old. It's odd to think about, and Izuku wonders what he should do with it all. Should he tell his mom what actually happened? He looks up to find his mom speaking with a strange brunette from before. I told you this wasn't from us pushing him. The man whispers. I know, I'm sorry I doubted it. I was just worried about getting caught. Inko explains. What do we do now? Are we supposed to have him tested? No, the doctor said that the quirk will reveal itself in time. This isn't what I'd hoped for when we got married, you know. The man seems frustrated with something. I know, Hisashi, but we can always try again. Inko states. Izuku recognizes the man's name. This man is my father. He knows that last time his father left after discovering Izuku was quirkless, but he'd never been able to remember the man's face. Izuku's emerald eyes meet Hisashi's blue ones. Izuku decides to keep what really happened today a secret. He isn't sure what they're talking about, but it's clearly something they want to keep a secret. Plus, Izuku knows that he can't exactly trust his father for anything. Let's get out of here. We can discuss this at home. Hisashi tells Inko. Izuku draws on some spare pieces of paper in his room while listening in on his parents' conversation. They talk about some sort of plans for Hisashi to train Izuku being thrown out the window. They say they wanted him to have some sort of telekinesis and fire quirk combination so he could become a pro hero who would make money to help them live better lives. He is a little hurt by the idea that they want to use him, but also grieved the idea of not being able to repay his mother, who'd always helped him in the past. Or rather the future. Idly he wonders if this is why his father ends up leaving. At dinner, Inko helps Izuku get into his chair. It's a little embarrassing, but he supposes he'll have to get used to it now that he's back in his younger body again. Inko scoops a portion of yakisoba into a bowl for Izuku. When she sits the bowl in front of Izuku, something strange happens. His eyes scan the dish, noticing every small detail about it. Something in his brain tells him that the vegetables were cooked slightly too long, but that they are still edible. For some reason, his brain can also tell that there is no sugar in the sauce. His brain makes a note of everything it sees in the dish. Mom? He asks without thinking. Yes, baby? Did you forget to put sugar in the sauce? Both of his parents pause at the strange question coming from their 4-year-old. They share a glance, and Inko turns around to Izuku. Why do you ask, Izuku? She inquires. Izuku thinks it over. Well, normally yakisoba noodle sauce has a bit of sugar in it. It's supposed to enhance the flavor and help the sauce stick to the noodles. His mother expressed shock at his knowledge. He had explained it as if he were reading out of a cookbook. The two adults exchanged glances again, both confused and shocked. Izuku's shocked about it a bit himself. He'd occasionally help his mom in the kitchen before, but he has never memorized the recipes for anything, and he certainly doesn't know how he could tell the sauce didn't have any sugar. Izuku, his mother asks softly, how do you know there's supposed to be sugar in the sauce? I don't know. He responds truthfully, I just do. Inko smiles. Well, that's a good eye you have. Yes, I did forget to put some sugar in the sauce, but it's okay, we can still eat it. It won't change anything, I promise. Izuku isn't sure how to respond, so he just nods in agreement. His parents finish getting their plates and sit around the table. Itadakamase. The family shouts in unison. They eat in silence until everyone is finished, after which they're all content on doing their separate activities for a while. Inko sits in the living room with Izuku and watches his color in a hero from a coloring book. She takes notice of how he keeps perfectly in the lines and uses the correct colors for the heroes she can identify. Izuku is more preoccupied with wondering about the strange interaction at dinner, but eventually shrugs it off as a one-off. He'll have to be more careful if he doesn't want to reveal his secret. Vaguely, the two greenettes can hear Hisashi on the phone in another room of the house. He seems frustrated and raises his voice several times before hanging up the phone. After a long while, he comes into the living room and turns the TV onto a sports channel. The three of them sit in what Izuku feels is an awkward moment for the rest of the evening. Perhaps it's only him who feels uneasy, but can he be blamed? He hasn't seen his father in his entire life, and now he's sitting on the couch unaware of what's happening in his 4-year-old son's mind. Today is strange, and Izuku still isn't sure what he should do about anything. He lays in bed that night wondering if he'll ever see the homeless-looking guy again. He wonders if maybe this is his second chance at life, a chance Izuku is sure very few people get to have. He should be happy, but he really doesn't want to experience the same life as before. For now, he decides to go to sleep and leave the rest for tomorrow. The morning comes like a wave crashing into a dock. The early morning sun blazes through the window, casting an orange hue around the bedroom. Izuku can feel a throbbing headache creeping up behind his eyelids and surrounding his temples. His throat also feels drier than a fresh load of laundry. In simple terms, he feels like sheet. For some reason, being sent to the past sapped a lot of Izuku's energy. If it wouldn't hurt his younger self, Izuku would be marching to the kitchen to make a fresh cup of straight coffee beans to quell his overexhaustion. He contemplates attempting the idea, but ultimately decides against it. His mother would be furious at him for it, and wonder why her child suddenly wants such a bitter drink, and he can't exactly tell her he's had it plenty of times before with his father still around. Oh yeah, his father. He admittedly doesn't know much about the man besides the fact that in his previous life, he supposedly worked overseas after leaving Izuku and his mother, but Izuku is pretty sure his mom came up with that lie to cover up the fact he was too embarrassed to have a quirkless son. Izuku wonders when exactly it is that Hisashi ends up leaving them behind. He can't remember how long he stayed last time after discovering Izuku was quirkless, though he supposes the man will be around a while longer considering the doctor mistakenly told them that Izuku has a quirk. There's a knock on his bedroom door. Izuku baby, are you up? His mother asks as she slowly creaks the door open. Izuku watches as her head pops around the doorway, peering into his room. Breakfast will be ready shortly. Why don't you get ready? We're going out today. As a 4-year-old, Izuku doesn't exactly get a say in what they plan to do, so he makes himself content with the idea of going out in public. Okay, Mom. He gets out of bed and makes his way to the small table in the center of his room. It's a plastic table with All Might's face printed across it. He isn't quite sure what to make of the pro hero just yet. After all, he did leave a quirkless teenager on top of a multi-story building after crushing his dreams of becoming a hero. While Izuku can't exactly blame the pro for every bit of discrimination in his life, he can clearly see that the hero was in the wrong to some degree. Izuku just isn't sure what degree that is yet. Pushing the thought out of the forefront of his mind, Izuku changes into the clothes that are laid out across the plastic table. He's not sure when they were put there, but he assumes his mother left them out for him to find. After changing, Izuku makes his way to the bathroom where he has to use the wooden step stool to reach his toothbrush. He picks up on the slight difficulty he has with maneuvering what should be a familiar object. Could it be a sign that he doesn't have the same capabilities he did in his older body?
Probably.
He suspects that more than just his coordination is probably off. His physical strength is definitely different. What else might be different now? He rinses the remaining toothpaste from his mouth and makes his way to the kitchen where he smells the salty aroma of miso soup calling his name. His mom is scooping the soup into bowls at the counter, and his father is sat at the dining table scrolling through his phone. Izuku barely manages to crawl up into his seat. It almost tips over onto him, but he swiftly swings his legs around to shift his weight evenly across the chair, finding balance. "I've got miso soup." Inko sing-songs in that motherly way that makes it sound like she has a special surprise. She sets the 3 bowls on the dining room table. Izuku gets the plastic fat gum bowl. "Itadakimasu." Izuku shouts gratefully. His father makes a face at his volume, but echoes the sentiment before taking a bite. Before Izuku can even touch his food, the same strange occurrence from last night happens again. His brain notes every little thing about the soup that someone who didn't make it shouldn't be aware of. He can tell that there is a little over half a teaspoon of salt, and that multiple types of miso paste were used instead of his mother's traditional way of making it with only rice miso paste. This sudden NTMT analysis of his food is not normal for Izuku. It makes no sense. Why is he suddenly so fluent in the art of food? He rarely helps in the kitchen, and he certainly hasn't spent any time reading up on the latest Chef's Delight magazines. Thankfully, he at least has the sense to keep his brain's perceptions of the meal to himself this time. The soup nourishes his mouth, filling it with wonderful sparks of flavor from home-cooked tofu and koji. If Izuku wonders when he ever developed an extreme appreciation for food, then it gets written off as a newfound appreciation, developed by his mind from the stress of killing himself, in favor of cursing his small mouth for not being able to richen his tongue with more of the soup's delight. He finishes his soup as his parents finish getting ready for whatever outing they've planned for today. Izuku could have never guessed where his parents had planned on going today, but the grocery store doesn't exactly scream family bonding to him. Ideally, you wouldn't drag a preschooler out of the house for grocery shopping when both parents are available. This would avoid any embarrassing tantrums. Izuku internally pats himself on the back for saving them from such an occasion before they can even enter the store. However, he just keeps the idea in the back of his mind in case of an emergency where a tantrum might just be the thing to save him from an unwanted headache. The family stops outside the shopping center. When both of his parents turn to look at him, he fears that he might have outed his thoughts with his mumbling habit. Hisashi, who seems mildly annoyed already, due to Izuku's refusal to hold his hand while walking, decides to explain what this family outing is for. "Izuku, when we go in here, I want you to tell me if any of the store's products stand out to you. For example, if you think about how much sugar is in a baked sweet, or maybe what kind of vegetables a pickle was made from. Do you understand?" Izuku isn't sure the exact motive behind his parents' actions, but he suspects it has something to do with what happened at dinner last night.
Yeah.
Okay. He tries to sound like an enthusiastic kid, but both of his parents are stone-faced, and he can't tell if it worked or not. All right, keep your mind on it. They enter the store and make their way towards the produce aisle. On the surface, nothing is out of the ordinary. The shelves and floor are fairly clean, all the lights are working, and employees are directing customers to products, but for Izuku, his mind races faster than his eyes can move. The banana peel in the trash can next to the doorway was eaten roughly 3 hours ago based on its decomposition. A carton of fresh cookies was made 2 hours ago with a mix of brown and granulated sugar, 2 eggs, and approximately 73 chocolate chips. His head screams from the inflow of knowledge on every edible item in sight. Thankfully, packaged goods like trail mix and gum seem to not affect him, but there is so much everywhere else that it's hard to even think outside of how many seeds each strawberry contains. He can't help it when he falls to the ground, having his legs fail beneath all the strain, and he has to clutch his head to stop it from instinctively scanning for another food product to put under the microscope that his brain has become. He weakly tries to repeat bits of information to his parents from what his brain has gathered, so they can leave as soon as possible. Eat 8 ounces of PPP powdered sugar and teach the blue cake frosting. A ringing pain fills his ears, distorting his voice. Teach the Roma TT tomatoes are TT 27DD days old. His breath hitches, but neither of his parents have stepped in to help, so he tries his best to continue. Tiche. His breathing is rapid, and a whine forces itself from his throat. He chokes on unshed tears. Can't it hurts TT too much. The only thing filling the silence of the grocery store is the stream of information being thrown around Izuku's head. All of the customers inside of him have stopped their shopping to watch as his mind tries to tear him apart from the inside out. He attempts to squander the thoughts, to alleviate his pain by thinking of a hero analysis, but his efforts only add fuel to the fire as a sob wrenches itself out of him. One more, Hisashi demands. Prove to me for certain that you can see beyond the surface level of these items, and tell me something not even the chef could know. Insanity. It's the word Izuku would use to describe what his father just asked of him. Does he not see Izuku is in excruciating pain right now? How can he even provide information on something a chef wouldn't know about their own food? He spares a glance at his father to determine if the man is actually serious. That's when Izuku sees it. Piece of KK Cop Pan has a TTT 2-inch HH hair eye in it. He somehow manages to extract the information from his brain's list and say it aloud. He just hopes it's enough to finally get his parents to leave. Hisashi approaches Izuku slowly. Crouching down to grab Izuku's chin, he guides the boy's face up. Tense jade green eyes meet icy pale blue. It's such a shame you had to go and inherit my mother's quirk. I had such high hopes for you, Izuku. Disdain filters into his voice like rain on a sunny day. Come, let's go home. Inko and I have a few things to discuss regarding your future. Izuku isn't internally a little kid, but he hides underneath his bed covers, trying to subdue the frantic shaking in his core. His mind has become a sharp knife, slicing venomous suspicions throughout every fiber of his being. Subconsciously, Izuku can hear Hisashi shouting at Inko in the living room. It's not enough to break through his thoughts.
It only adds to his spiraling.
What had his father meant by discuss your future? It's most likely got something to do with his new quirk. My quirk. Izuku still can't quite believe it. He has a real working quirk. As awful as it had been to experience such an incredibly painful influx of knowledge, Izuku couldn't help but smile at the implications it meant for his day-to-day life outside of home. But how is it even possible? He'd never had a quirk in his previous life, so why does he have one now? After all, he's pretty sure he would have noticed if he could microanalyze every aspect of a dish in his line of sight. Heck, apparently, he can even get information on different produce items. His father had mentioned it was the same quirk his grandmother had, so perhaps having a quirk used to change his body had activated it? Although that's completely unheard of. On top of that, I'd mean that this quirk skipped a whole generation, which is fairly rare in modern times. Not to mention the man he'd met, who Izuku supposes is the reason for his time traveling, only put his mind back into his younger body, right? Why would that give him a quirk factor? It's something you have to be born with, you can't just be given one. And without one, his body shouldn't even be able to withstand having a quirk. If only he could find the man who saved him, then he could get some real answers. But where would I even dash? On. The cry of pain tears through Izuku's lips before he can even process what just happened. He swiftly pulled out from underneath the bed sheets at an unusual side angle that causes his forearm bones to rub against each other, forming an overwhelming pain up his arm. Stop that incessant muttering right now. Hisashi yells at the small greenette. You had better thank your mother, boy. She just kept your scrawny butt from getting tossed out into the streets. Izuku can only gape fearfully into his father's dangerously pale eyes. He hadn't even known his father was in the room, let alone that he was muttering again, and did he just say they were going to toss him in the streets? Izuku thought Hisashi was supposed to be the one who gets fed up with their family and leaves, not Izuku. It's what he did in Izuku's previous life, after all. He supposes he really should thank his mother for not submitting to his father's wishes, if that's the case. She saved me more than I knew. Hisashi's voice fills the unsettling silence. I told you what my hopes for your future were. I even offered to you to fight. I wanted you to become a hero like I didn't get the opportunity to become. But no, you just had to go and develop Mother's stupid quirk dish. Why would you do that to us, Izuku? The whole reason your mother and I even got married was so you'd have the ability to combine our quirks into a powerful pyrokinesis quirk. Hisashi uncles his belt buckle and slides off the belt, making sure to hold the metal end outwards. I'd oughta teach you about the 3 R's in a family: respect for your elders.
Slap.
Responsibility for your actions and their consequences.
Whack.
Rectification for any misbehavior. Slice. Izuku isn't internally a little kid, but he can't breathe. It feels like his lungs will collapse in on themselves any second. He chokes on the air, consuming less than he puts out in a way he learned to stifle his hysterics when Bakuga used to hit him. In this moment, he almost misses the blonde. It's so dark. The open wounds on his face aren't fatal, but thick crimson flows down onto his lips, spreading the taste of copper around his mouth like a virus. He scrambles as far back as possible into the corner of the tight closet space. His heart beats rapidly in his chest, causing further distress to his mind as he tries his best to reel in his overflowing emotions. It was never this hard to contain his inner thoughts in his previous life. Could it be another side effect from the quirk that's causing all of his functions, physical and mental, to revert to his body's age? The bruises on his arms and legs throb, giving him enough sense to ever so slightly ground himself. It'd be easier if he could see his surroundings, but it'll have to do. He can't escape from the images that replay over and over in his mind. The belt lashings, the kicking, and the final slap his father had given him as he desperately clung onto anything as his father dragged him out of his bedroom and down the hallway to the closet where he was currently locked inside. Izuku's bedroom door didn't have a lock on the outside for his father to lock him in with, so the man had improvised. Izuku manages to rein in some of his consternation, allowing him to think properly enough to form coherent thoughts. How long will they keep him in here for? Surely his mom is protesting this absurd mistreatment of her 4-year-old. She cares for and loves Izuku with all her heart, and she knows he'd do the same for her. But the silence is deafening, and his hands are still trembling with fear. He clutches his knees to his chest tightly as he starts to lose his mind to the darkness encasing him. You're such a Deku. Why would she come to your rescue when you so clearly just disappointed her by having a useless, unheroic quirk? She hates you. He can't believe the idiocy of what his father had disclosed to him. A quirk marriage? In what world would his mother ever be involved in such a nauseating act of family cruelty? His mind creeps in to tell him that it has to be true, that it's the whole reason she could never support his dreams to become a hero because it would be dismissing her failed goal to have a child with a hero's quirk. And isn't that one hell of a thought to have? He wonders if that's always what she'd always wanted from him. He hears the silence break for a single second as a drop of blood hits the carpet. It reminds him of watching as his tears collided with the concrete like a deformed body. He swipes at the blood dangling off his chin. He wants to keep it from touching the floor again to avoid any more issues his father could possibly find with him. As such, it doesn't do him any better having the warm substance sticking to his hand. He blindly licks at where he can feel it running thickly down his thumb. It's unsanitary and a little gross, but if it helps him in any way, then it's worth it. His chest is still full of fear, but his adrenaline from the thrashing has dwindled, causing Izuku to feel utterly defeated. His exhaustion from crying and disassociating settles over him, coaxing him to lie down with his legs still held tightly against his chest. Even if he wanted to stretch out, there isn't any room for it. Tears pool in that crook between his eyes and nose, trapped by gravity. He reaches around above himself to feel for the gray jacket he'd seen hanging when he was thrown into the enclosed space. Using it as a blanket would save him from the growing coldness he feels in his fingers and toes. He bundles up, letting the tears fall down his nose. A small sniffle is all he can manage before his eyes shut against the empty darkness and sleep takes over his mind. 3 weeks later. He isn't sure why he finds himself in this small space again, but it's his 5th time so far. He listens to the click of the lock that seals his fate for the next many hours. Last time he was in here, he'd been trapped for nearly 9 hours straight, and the amount of time he spends in here seems to only be increasing each time. He'd even missed lunch the other day, and was forced to wait out his hunger until dinner arrived. He's grateful that he hadn't yet had another bloody beating like the one he'd first barely held through. His wounds from the event have begun to scab over and slowly heal. Unfortunately, he does have a few new welts around his body from newer instances. He can't help the unbearable dread that seeps into his heart at the idea that this will be his usual punishment from here on.
He
doesn't even have a jacket to lay with anymore. They'd taken it after the first punishment, claiming he'd ruined it with blood stains. Then, after they'd retrieved the item, they added another 2 hours to his timeout sentence, as they like to call it. If Izuku's timing is right, his punishment would end roughly around midnight. He whines at the realization he's going to miss dinner. He'll have to go to bed hungry, and may even have to spend the night in here if his parents decide not to let him out. He can imagine the thought of it cold, hungry, and cramped in this little lonely corner in the dark. He can't believe how lucky he is when he hears the door unlock, and his mother quickly slides in a cup of what smells like fresh food. He hadn't been able to see the meal in the light, so he's not sure what it is, but he grabs the warm glass, careful not to spill it, and starts gulping down the creamy chicken soup inside of it. His quirk activates upon his taste buds meeting the substance, and it reads off the meal's general information to him. Ingredients: chicken broth, diced carrots, diced green spring onions, diced tsukiote mushrooms, garlic powder, ginger powder. The dish's name is osamashi. Things of note include an imbalance of ginger powder to garlic powder ratio. Neither of the powdered keys are mixed into the chicken broth, and sit only near the surface. The dish was freshly made within the last 14 minutes. The original recipe calls for sweet onions, which were substituted with green spring onions. Tsukiote mushrooms are poisonous and not advisable for human consumption. The dish qualifies as barely edible. Izuku practically chokes himself as he spits his mouthful of soup back into the cup. He's already drank half the portion given to him. No doubt he swallowed some of those diced mushrooms with it. What should he do? Do his parents even know they put poisonous mushrooms in this? But wait. Dinner time was a few hours ago, and this was made in the last 15 minutes. Inko had locked the closet door back moments after leaving the soup with Izuku. His mother gave him poison? How could she purposefully do that to him? He feels like he's going to vomit, and he's not sure if it's from the literal poison currently sloshing around in his stomach or if it's because he's realizing now that his mother was never on his side. To begin with, he'd thought he could trust her. When she'd given him food, he'd thought it was an act of defiance against his father, but now he feels betrayed. Izuku screams.
Loud.
Heartbreaking. Terrifying. Screams. He keeps screaming as tears of cruel deception fill his hands with enough liquid to replace what he'd drank from the horrid meal he'd been served. Minutes pass by before someone comes and unlocks the closet door. In an instant before he can even think, Izuku ducks between their legs and bolts toward the front door. He can just barely reach the handle, and he manages to pry it open, just a sliver reaching out to escape from his parents' grasp before. Crunch. Og ha ha ha. Izuku's blood-curdling scream fills the quiet apartment. The small fingers of his right hand are bent backwards, caught in between the front door and wall. Thick red blood runs down the walls and glosses over his peeled-apart nail beds in a sickly display of wrong. The pain only serves to keep adding more desperate cries for help to anyone nearby who might hear him. The door is reopened despairingly slow, letting Izuku feel every scraping motion and rebending of his frail fingers. The blood splatters straight from his fingertips onto the carpet. Now look at what you've gone and done, Izuku. His mother chides him. Why? He screams accusingly at her. You gave me poison. Izuku. She yells back in a scolding tone. Go to your room right this instant. I will come in to bandage your fingers, and then we'll see what to do about this poor behavior of yours. He hesitates. It's only a fraction of a second, but his mother sees it and swings her hand through the air, causing Izuku to be pushed to the ground by an unseen force. Go. Izuku sprints for his room almost as fast as he had for the chance of freedom. He's careful not to slam his bedroom door, turning the handle and barely pressing into it until the smallest tapping of wood on wood can be heard. He severely doubts the action will be enough to save him from whatever is coming for him. His mother carefully enters his room with a roll of gauze almost a full hour after his hand was mangled. She doesn't say anything, just sits next to him on the edge of the bed and motions for Izuku to show her his hand. He'd kept the oozing blood-soaked hand over one of his All Might hoodies to keep it from staining his bedding. He can feel his mother's gaze harden when she sees the mess. However, she doesn't comment. He begrudgingly gives her his hand to bandage. He's pretty sure the injury he's been nursing for the past hour is several grueling hairline fractures in each one of his right hand's fingers. Inko wraps his entire hand like a mummy until he's unable to bend any of his fingers. "Izuku, do you know I hate treating you like this?" She sets his hand down gently on the bed. "But you have to learn you're not allowed to talk back to your mother like that." All his hope, all his faith in her, disappears in an instant. This is not his mother. His mother was kind. She actually cared about Izuku, and she would never have let his father treat him like this, let alone treat him like this herself. He's not sure exactly where that stranger's quirk sent him, but one thing is for certain. This is not Izuku's reality. Now, his mother puts just enough pressure on top of his bandaged hand to send a twinge of pain thundering up his arm. "I have a surprise for you, Izuku." She gleams at him, reaching into her back pocket, pulling out and unfolding a dark blue t-shirt in Izuku's size with bold lettering that spells out, "Big Brother." "You're going to be a big brother, Izuku. Isn't that exciting?" That's not even close to any of the words Izuku would use to describe his thoughts at this moment. He's not sure if it's the shock of having a sibling who will have to protect from his frankly deranged parents, or if it's the poisonous mushrooms he ate an hour ago, but Izuku promptly vomits onto the front of the shirt and watches as it rolls off the silky fabric and falls onto the already ruined All Might hoodie. He watches in disgust as the chunks mix with the dried crimson on yellow and blue fabric. Both parties sit there in silent shock at the abrupt response until Izuku has to make a dash for the bathroom. He keels over the toilet bowl and heaves his stomach's contents into the water. Definitely the mushrooms then. 5 years later. Ever since Izuku's failed attempt at escaping, his right-hand fingers have been difficult to use. His parents never took him to the doctor's office, obviously, so they healed improperly. Now, when he tries to use his right hand for long periods of time, the bones will rub together awkwardly and cause severe cramping. This is why Izuku decided to become ambidextrous. He taught himself how to write with it at the same time he taught his little sister to read and write. That's right, his little sister, Hoshiko. He looks across his bedroom at the 4-year-old playing with his old hero figurines on the floor. She is just the cutest little sister ever. She catches him watching lovingly from across the room and meets his gaze with her perfect smile. Her verdant eyes shine like stars, complemented by her long caramel hair. He loves it when she asks him to help her tie it back. Her hair is softer than melted butter, and he loves playing with it. Hoshiko smiles up at Izuku and gestures for him to come over and play heroes with her. He could never deny a request from her. Not when she smiled at him, like he was her whole world. The only reason Izuku has the time to teach her anything or play heroes together is because their parents had taken him out of the public school system after he developed his quirk. His mother is always home, so they had no trouble setting it up. His parents threw him into an online class that he had to work on a few times a week. It wasn't very hard considering he's already gone through elementary schooling, but it was still a pain in the rear to sit through all the videos of how the basics work. One time he'd gotten extremely bored and tried finding hero footage to analyze online, only to realize that his parents had blocked all forms of public websites from his account on the computer. When his mother walked past, she told him it was to make sure he focused on his work, but he knows it's just a poor excuse to keep him from contacting anyone outside the house for domestic help. Hero Nizen, you can play as All Might and you'll play as Fire Guy. Hoshiko invites him into the game by shoving the All Might figurine into his hands. Alright, shsh Shichan. He internally cringes at his stutter, but Hoshiko, who's only known him to have it, doesn't even blink before she's back to playing heroes. His sister always wants to play as Endeavor. It concerns him a little bit considering what The door to his room swung open. He'd gotten distracted by his thoughts and didn't hear his mother's footsteps coming down the hallway. "Izuka, sweetie," she cooed, "won't you make us yaki onigiri for supper?" She phrases it as a question, but Izuka knows he doesn't have a choice in the matter. His parents have been making him cook their meals for the past year. More specifically, ever since he could reach the ingredients on his own. It's the only reason his mother had even decided to try convincing his father not to throw Izuku out onto the streets to starve, not like he's better off here, after all. Izuku can see the logic behind it though. With his quirk dish, it's practically like having your own 5-star chef around 24. He nods in agreement to his mother's request on food, and encourages Hoshiko to follow him to the kitchen, so he can watch over her while also cooking dinner. He sets her down at the small dining table with the figurines and one of his old coloring books he thought to grab. He turns around and moves around the kitchen, easily grabbing what he'll need for the onigiri, without hardly thinking about it. He's discovered that his quirk allows him to internally view any recipe that someone has specifically named aloud for him. He doesn't exactly see the recipe, he more so is supplied a list of ingredients and measurements by his mind and understands how each ingredient should change the current state of the food he's preparing. It's likely his parents already knew about how that worked, considering they'd just left him to make the food without ever having given him instructions. He sets 3 cups of water to boil for the rice whilst he fetches the rest of the ingredients. The bonus of his quirk is that he can eyeball the perfect amount of anything he needs without having to measure it out. This makes washing all the dishes after a meal much easier for him. He listens to Hoshiko quietly humming to herself as she abandons the hero figurines on the table in favor of a coloring book he'd brought along for her. He doesn't look over at her. He doesn't want to cause either of them a distraction from their tasks, but he smiles softly as he pours the rice into the bubbling water, covers it, and puts it on the back burner to finish cooking. Meanwhile, he directs his attention to the chopping board to slice thin pieces of salted salmon. He gently folds them into little meat chunks that he can squish into the rice ball later. Now he moves on to mixing together the sauce. It's relatively easy, and only requires a little patience. He whisks a small, heated bowl with 2 tablespoons of sugar and 6 tablespoons of soy sauce until the sugar dissolves. Then he adds in 2 tablespoons of sesame oil and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to bring out the flavor. He can smell the savory sauce wafting through the air. His stomach growls in jealousy. He isn't allowed to eat any of the food he makes unless it's plainly visible that the food has those insufferable Tsukiote mushrooms in it. Originally, Inko had picked the mushrooms up from the wild on her way home, but since then she's kept them growing in a plant pot beside the fridge. Izuku looks at the purplish-brown fungus in disgust. They aren't lethal, or else he'd have fed them to his so-called parents a long time ago and been done with them for good. Unfortunately, they only cause severe stomach pains and vomiting, but even that has had an effect on Izuku's growing body's health. He's thinner than he'd ever been in his previous life, and he has a paler skin tone than anyone else in the house. He carefully folds the sauce into the rice, making sure he covers the grains evenly. Then he takes a handful and presses it into the onigiri mold with a piece of cut salami in the center. He takes the finished product and places it on an empty plate.
He
repeats the process a few times until he uses up the last of the ingredients, making exactly 12 perfectly triangular rice balls. He runs clean water over his hands and picks up one of the rice patties to hand press it. This makes it less liable to fall apart when he starts to fry them. The water keeps the rice grains and sauce from sticking to his hands and adds a little moisture to keep the rice from burning. Placing the rounded patty onto a large frying pan, he moves to pick up another ball. It's only on his 3rd rice patty that he hears the faintest whisper of his sister counting as he places them down.
3.
She holds out the number. He places another rice patty onto the frying pan. 4. His heart swells with pride in her counting skills, but he remains calm. 5. Izuku could sit here for hours listening to her counting up the rice ball. He's so grateful that he caught her without drawing attention to it. He continues to move the rice patties back and forth between the plate and the pan, listening as she counts to 10 over and over again. He supposes he'll have to help her learn higher numbers now that she's gotten so good at the first few, but he soaks in this moment of achievement for the both of them. Eventually, He brings himself to stop transferring the food between spots and starts to slowly fry their dinner until the rice is a golden brown color. He makes sure to cook his rice ball last so that the mushrooms sticking out of his rice patty wouldn't contaminate the others. It's one thing if he poisons his parents, it's a completely different matter if he accidentally poisons Hoshiko. He would regret it forever if that were to happen, which is why at every meal he eats he looks over each individual portion to use his quirk and ensure it's completely safe for her. Izuku walks around the counter to poke his head into the living room. His mother and father are on the couch watching the news, and the latter is also doing work on his laptop. Dinna is already, he says hushly. Izuku, when are you ever going to stop with this stuttered mumbling? His mother whines. Honestly, it's infuriating to even try, and guess what you said? Sorry, mother. Dinner is ready now. He chokes on the words to make them sound clearer. Oh goody, I was starving over here. She smiles cunningly at him, daring him to bite back. It pains him to walk away like it didn't hurt to hear his mom's kind voice say such cruel things to him, but he does what he has to in order to survive. He still has to take care of Hoshiko after all. He returns to the kitchen only for his heart to leap out of his chest. Hoshiko. He runs across the room to the stovetop where he can see the brunette staring intensely at the burner he'd carelessly left on. The flames flicker gently, reaching out for the girl like they want to wrap around her in a careful hug. Izuku quickly turns the burner off, but it's too late. He looks up to find his parents practically bouncing at their new discovery. Hoshiko has a pyrokinesis quirk, just as they'd wanted all these years. Izuku has known for a few months about her quirk. He'd accidentally discovered it one night while he was cooking. He couldn't get the flames to stay a consistent temperature on the burner. He'd mess with it a few times before deciding to turn it off and change burners. When he did so, he saw Hoshiko shake from her thoughts out of the corner of his eye. At first, he didn't think much of it. Then when the other burner had the same problem, he'd seen Hoshiko intently staring not at him, but at the flames. He reached to turn off the burner, but the flames reached out and blocked him from the knob, just barely not burning his flesh. When Hoshiko realized what she'd done, she started crying and begged for Izuku to forgive her. He honestly hadn't been upset with her at all. It's not like she could control what almost happened, but he used it as a way to keep her quirk a secret between just the two of them. She'd promised immediately, but her growing fascination with flames continued to pose an issue, so from then on Izuku had made sure to block any open flames with his body. He knew it was inevitable that his parents would find out about her quirk, but he'd hoped to at least stall for a bit more time until he could properly teach Hoshiko about their parents' ridiculous ideals, but there was no going back from here. Hoshiko, you've got a fire quirk. I'm so proud of you, baby, their mother squealed. Hisashi, can you believe it? Our baby girl. She's going to make the greatest hero ever. Their father's smile was more sinister compared to their mother's. Yes, she will. We'll have to start her training immediately. I'll clean up the training room tonight, and we'll begin tomorrow. Izuku was frozen in place, stuck watching a scene he knew would only end in pain for Hoshiko. How could he have let this happen? The girl only smiled, not fully understanding what her parents were talking about. Whatever training their father had in store for her, there was nothing Izuku could say nor do about it to save her. The following day, Hisashi spent the morning cleaning out a room Izuku had never been allowed into. His parents called it the training room. They told him throughout his life that it was dangerous for him to be in there, that he could get hurt, and that it was only meant for powerful quirk training. He knew it was a complete lie. In his past life, the room had been used as his mother's homework station where she could sort through paperwork and other bills. Either way, their comments got under his skin, feeding his negative inner thoughts. The ones that say someone like him can never be a true hero. That's why he isn't allowed in there. It's because he isn't special like Hoshiko is. Today he ended up peeking into the room for the first time. He felt the radiating heat from out in the hallway. The sliding door warmed all the air it came into contact with. Izuku picks up the door just enough to keep it from scraping on the floor and slowly opens it until one eye can peek into the crevice and survey the room. He's almost surprised, but his shock disappears before it even has time to settle in. It really shouldn't be a surprise that their father had flames spewing from his mouth into the open air, leaving smoke to float out the open window. Izuku sees Hoshiko concentrating solely on the flames that gather above her head. Beads of sweat drip down her face and dissolve into thin air from the heat. When their father has to pause for air, he tells Hoshiko to concentrate harder and to feel the flames, whatever that means. It upsets Izuku to leave his sister in his father's incapable hands, but at least she isn't being pushed beyond her limits right away and getting hurt. Maybe she'll be better off this way. Izuku hates that she is being trained for heroics at such a young age without her consent, but he has to admit she's already better off than he's ever been since their parents discovered his quirk. That was enough to put Izuku at ease for now. He lifts the door once more and slides it shut. Izuku often finds himself missing Hoshiko now that a lot of her time is spent training her quirk. He looks at the coloring supplies she left on the table in his room. There's a drawing on a blank sheet of copy paper that catches his eye. Looking at it, Izuku infers it's a portrait of their family. Hoshiko stands between both of their parents. Their father stands on her left with orange lines that Izuku assumes are flames coming from his head, and their mother stands on Hoshiko's right, between her and Izuku. The three of them are holding hands, but Izuku stands alone on the far right side of the paper, disconnected from the trio. His heart twinges as he looks at the portrait. He doesn't want to dissect what exactly is making his heart hurt and chooses to set the paper back on the table. He moves to neatly organize all the scattered crayons back into the box. Izuku watches his sister trudge out of the training room for lunch, lips dry and hair damp with sweat. He spots tears building in the corners of her verdant eyes, but she holds herself together by sitting down and stabbing at the grilled chicken bento he'd prepared for her. He can tell she feels pressured and overworked. He wants to find a way to cheer her up. Knowing her birthday is just around the corner, he thinks about surprising her with a gift. Unfortunately, the only thing he's good at is making food, but she doesn't seem to like the banana pudding he'd made as dessert today, so maybe food wasn't the way to go. His one skill in this life has failed to help him in his quest for her happiness. How could he cheer her up without going out to get something different and special for her? All he has around the house are the same old action figures and more food. Other than that, he's plumb out of luck. Unless, what if he could go out? He remembers a few weeks ago when Hoshiko brought up how much she loved her friend's dress. She talked on and on about how flowy and pretty it was. She even told Izuku that she'd love to have a green one just like it. What if he could get that dress for her? His parents would never let him just waltz out the front door, but what if he left by different means? He doesn't have money to buy anything with, and he'd have to travel by foot if he did manage to make it out of the house intact. Not to mention his mother doesn't work in this lifetime, which means she is always at home doing something or another, mostly punishing Izuku for any small wrongdoings. If Izuku's parents found him trying to sneak out, they might actually kill him. A shiver climbs his spine, making the little hairs on his forearm raise. He did not want to find out if that was the truth. He looks at the ground outside the window above his bed. It's an insane height for a normal 10-year-old to conquer without breaking an arm or leg, but for him, it probably wouldn't take more than a few well-knotted hero merch blankets. Going out to find the perfect birthday gift for his little sister was an easy decision to make. His only hesitation lies in what would happen if he came back and his parents discovered he'd gone out. After a whole day of contemplating it, he fully decided to commit to the idea and came up with a plan that gave him the best advantage. He snuck a 20 from his mother's purse when she went to the bathroom and tucked it between his armpit. It wasn't the cleanest of places, but he knew it would draw the least attention if he got stopped in the hallway. He waits until after dinner to put his plan into motion. It was sketchy, but he knew it'd be his only chance if he wanted to secure a present before her birthday. He cleans the dishes as the rest of them eat. If he seems paler than normal, then his family only perceives it as a side effect of him opting out of the meal. In reality, he only chose not to eat in case he got sick on the street from all the exercise, which would cause a commotion if people saw. When he finishes cleaning and waits for his father to start more training with Hoshiko before he leaves. His mother sits down on the couch to watch TV, but that doesn't guarantee she'll stay there for long.
He has to be quick now.
He fishes the 20 from his pillowcase along with a long string of already tied blankets. Careful to not make a sound, he ties the makeshift rope around his bed frame and softly opens his window. Peering down at the pavement gives him a distinct sinking feeling that he ignores in favor of tossing out the fabric. He slips his legs out the window carefully, hanging from the windowsill, as he grabs hold of the rope. When his feet safely reach the ground, his heart rate spikes higher than ever. He lets out a breath he didn't know he was holding as he stares up at the empty room he'd just left. There's nothing more to see than a string of blankets, but it sends a wave of emotion through Izuku. I'm free. The thought fills him with more uncertainty than ever. Could he ever truly be free from this place? It feels almost too easy that he'd slipped out like that, but it's possible. He doubts his parents would even notify the police after discovering his absence. They'd probably wait at least 24 hours for either any poison in his system to get flushed out, or for him to return. Whichever happens first, I guess. He could make a run for it right now and figure out life for himself on the street. It wouldn't be great, but it had to be better than this place he was being raised in. But what would happen to Hoshiko if he decided to leave? He knows he can't provide her with a proper life out on the streets, and what if something bad happens to her after he leaves? He'd never be able to live with the guilt if she got hurt because of his actions. Emerald eyes rise to the vacant window, peering not at his bedroom, but at his cage. I can never be free unless she is safe. Izuku walks the streets of Mizudafu alone. At this point, he knows them like the back of his hand, but it feels different walking around in his younger body. He feels vulnerable. Rays of dimming light set upon the city. Office lights go dark as employees finish their shifts, and home lights turn on as people return home to make dinner or go straight to sleep. Izuku turns a corner into a small shopping center. He slows his pace until he comes to a stop at a thrift store. He stares up at the neon blue open sign that blinks at him to grab his attention and lure him into the small one-story building. Determination fills his soul. He's already been out for half an hour just walking. He needs to hurry if he wants to make it home before someone finds out he's missing. A bell chimes as he walks through the door. An enthusiastic employee sings "Welcome in" from somewhere amid clothing racks. Looking around, Izuku realizes he probably should have looked through Hoshiko's clothing to get her size, but it's too late to turn back now, so he'll just have to guess at her general size and hope it's right. The racks he looks at have an assortment of dresses he thinks his sister would look completely adorable in, but he keeps in mind how adamant she was about wanting a bright green dress. The only green ones they have for sale here seem to be darker than what he pictures Hoshiko wants. They would match better with the accessories she currently has, but he doesn't think she cares all that much about how her outfit matches at this age. He smiles, picturing her wearing a light green dress with bright yellow and red hairpins. He hopes she likes whatever he manages to find here. He wanders further down the racks until he's nearing a size he's pretty sure won't fit her when he sees the light fabric poke out of the rack. He shoves the red dress in front of it away and plucks out the mini dress. He holds it at her height for an inspection. It has a small rim of white lace sewn around the bottom and adjustable spaghetti straps. Other than that, the dress is rather plain-looking, nowhere near the roughly princess-like dress that Hoshiko had described, but it honestly felt like the exact thing she would love. She doesn't have many dresses in her closet, but the few she does are simple with minimal patterns. This dress was perfect for her birthday gift. Izuku brings it to the counter. He huffs, finding it slightly annoying that he can barely reach the middle of the high counter. Well, hello there. Look at you all grown up buying clothes out here on your own. Is this dress for someone special? Izuku has never been much of a talker, especially in this life where his stutter only seems to have gotten worse. He doesn't trust his voice enough and chooses to simply nod in response to the employee's question. How independent. You're too cute, all. They scan the dress tag. Okie doke, your total is $16.78. Izuku hands over the stolen 20 from his pocket and waits there, awkwardly shifting from one foot to the other. The cashier shoots him a smile and hands him the bag dress with his change. He ties it shut and heads for the door. Have a good night, doll, and make sure you get home safe, all right? You never know who's on the streets at this hour. They wave at him, and he bows slightly to show his appreciation. Izuku makes to take the shortest route home. He never took this way in his past life because it passes through a busy train station shopping center. However, he figures it'd be best to get home as soon as possible, and at this hour the streets are pretty deserted. In the station center, He stumbles upon an open convenience store with a big lime sign that reads Good Life Campaign in kanji. His stomach growls heavily, as if it knows what he could potentially find to eat inside. The remaining $3.22 in his pocket grow heavier as he notices just how empty his stomach feels. He's already taken the money from his mother, so why not buy himself something to eat? He would love to eat something that isn't laced in tsukiote for once. He knows he's crunched on time, but surely he's got enough to stop in and quickly grab something. He finds his way through the front door with an electrical beeping signaling his arrival. Scanning around, he sees the bathrooms down a hallway to his immediate left. On his right, there are aisles of chips, candy, instant noodles, drinks, and more. His stomach growls again with impatience. He makes his way down each aisle carefully, eyeing each item individually. His quirk doesn't activate through any of the processed foods wrappers, so he looks at the amount of food he's getting as well as the cost. Going out and shopping like this is the most exciting thing he's done in over 5 years. He can't believe how happy this small, everyday activity makes him feel as he continues to scan over items. He spares a second to sheepishly wave at the guy sitting behind the counter, who is presumably waiting for Izuku to finish shopping so he can check out Izuku's items and get ready for closing the store. Izuku's quirk locks onto the small hotbox sitting on the checkout counter. There are steamed pork buns, containers of Odin soup, and a few pieces of fried chicken all spinning in circles around the machine. The food looks delectable to him and his stomach, but he considers how little money he has available to spend and turns back to the processed goods. He eventually settled on a bag of plain potato chips. Not only could he make the small bag last a decent amount of time, but it also gives him the best ounce-cost ratio. He brings the bag to the counter and slides it onto the counter for the man to scan. The guy lightly chuckles at Izuku's excitement and rings up his chips. "This it?" he asks. Izuku confirms it with a swift nod. "That'll be $2.50. Izuku digs around the dress in his little sack for his change. He sets the $3 on the counter and puts the remaining cents in his shorts pocket. After a moment, the man pushes Izuku's money back toward him. Izuku eyes him with furrowed brows. "You know what? Just keep it, kid. I'll throw in some pork buns, too. I seen you eye 'em earlier. You look like you could use them."
What?
No, I gem. Okay, SS sir. Really? Izuku stutters out before his brain has time to process the man's generous offer. It's the man's turn to eye Izuku up and down with the same level of curiosity. It's blatantly clear the man hadn't expected him to stutter that much, if at all. "It's no worries, kid. I can see you're hungry. And I was fixin' to toss the buns anyway. No sense in wasting 'em, don't you think?"
Izuku has to agree with him on that.
Even in his past life, money and food could get tight when his mom struggled at work. He can't turn down the man's offer knowing he would throw them out, so he gives the guy a shaky smile and decides to try speaking again. "Teach thank YYUS, sir." He manages to keep most of the stuttering out, but not all. "No problem, kid." The kind man grabs a container and throws the last 2 pork buns into it. He returns to Izuku with a question. "Hey, you from around here by chance?" Izuku hesitates a moment, contemplating his motivations for asking a child that question before nodding. What's the worst that could happen? Is he gonna kidnap Izuku from his abusive home and put him somewhere where he'll be fed actual meals without poison? Sure, they might be crappy, but hey, it'd still be better. Izuku huffs to keep a small smirk from growing on his face. "Well," the guy interjects his thoughts. "How about you drop by same time tomorrow night? I'll have some more food ready to be tossed out around then. If you don't come get it, it'll go to waste." Izuku's mouth must drop because the man chuckles and says something about catching flies. It only serves to fuel the man's laughter. Izuku blushes in embarrassment, but smiles as wide as he can at the kind stranger. "Thank YYUSS so much." He bows deeply to show his gratitude for the man's kindness. When he raises his head, he narrowly misses hitting it on the counter's rim. "Hey, no worries. If anything, you're doing me a favor by saving the food from spoiling. You better get on home now, alright? Stay safe." They wave at one another as Izuku leaves the store. If the man frowns to himself after Izuku rounds the next corner, then the boy is none the wiser to it. Izuku somehow makes it home a few minutes before Hoshiko's training ends for the day. He quickly lays out the dress underneath his mattress along with a string of blankets he'd used when sneaking out. If he decides to return to the store tomorrow, then there's no point in untying all the fabric. He feels greatly refreshed after eating the 2 pork buns the man gave him. He ate them hurriedly on his way home so they wouldn't spoil before he had the chance to try them. He'd chosen to run after seeing a clock somewhere that read 7. His taste buds cling to the soft flavors as he hides the chips inside his pillowcase. He savors the taste as he sits down in his bed. Izuku can hear his father's footsteps approaching and makes to sit naturally with a random, open book in his hand. His father doesn't knock. Hoshiko's training is finished for the day. Watch her so I can get some work done. Izuku nods obediently, but his father is already out the door and doesn't see. He knows his father isn't actually going to work, but he can't find it in himself to care right now. Izuku pushes himself off the bed and sets the book closed on his dresser. He stops by the bathroom to grab a damp rag before making his way to the training room where he finds Hoshiko sprawled out on the floor from exhaustion. He raps a knuckle almost silently on the wooden paneling of the door before making his way across the room to sit beside her. He drapes the cool rag across her sweaty forehead. She smiles softly and peeks open one eye just enough to check it's Izuku before beaming up brightly at her brother. "Thank you, Anizen. You're ta best. And no pee problem," he whispers back fondly. His heart swells as she sits up and gives him a tight, sweaty hug. He chuckles. Izuku would go to the ends of the world for her without a second thought if it meant keeping her safe. He knows he's made the right choice by returning. He only hopes his resolve is enough to make it through this nightmare. "Oh, okay, Emma Missy, it's BB bath TT time." He teases softly. She groans defiantly before unceremoniously flopping back onto the floor in her usual dramatics. Izuku muffles his sigh and firmly insists she marches to her watery demise before he changes his mind about adding bubbles to her bathwater. He blinks and she's made it halfway down the hall calling for him to hurry up on Chan. He lets a small smile slip onto his lips as he takes his sweet time walking to the bathroom. Today is just not Izuku's day. The moment he wakes up, he curls in on himself, hiding behind his knees. Nothing's even happened for him to count today as bad. He simply feels like it is. Last night, he'd gone to bed partially hoping he'd never have to wake up and see his parents again. It helped him have somewhat of an easier time sleeping, but he knew it probably wasn't the best solution to his problems. He feels like his mind is trapped in an endless void. His negative thoughts spring from thin air and take chunks out of his already dangerously low self-esteem.
He sighs.
He silently contemplates the pros and cons of killing himself for the nth time in the past 5 years. The thought isn't anything new, but he's never truly considered it an option since he's always had Hoshiko around. She still needs his protection, so he'll survive for her sake. With that, he's lazily getting up and ready for the day. He goes through the motions of showering, brushing his teeth, and taming his unruly curls that fall to his neck. He makes a mental note to give himself another trim-up soon. He returns to his room to catch up on some online schoolwork on his father's old laptop. Izuku was given it as a hand-me-down when his father got tired of him needing to use it for schoolwork. His father had swiftly gotten himself a brand new one, so Izuku could have the old one. At some point in the morning, Hoshiko wakes up, and she's brought in by their mother for Izuku to watch over. Their father is already at work for the day, and their mother returns to the living room to watch some news. A few hours pass by when Izuku suddenly flinches slightly at the sound of his mother getting up from her spot on the squeaky sofa. He listens to her footfalls coming down the hallway. When she stops halfway and a click signals she went into the bathroom, Izuku lets out a shaky breath he didn't know he was holding. He hates how much his anxiety and awareness have grown, but there's nothing he can do to help it, so he resigns to leave it be. "Oni-chan." His sister's voice breaks his thoughts. "Are you okay?" She's the sweetest sister in the world, but she shouldn't have to worry about him at her age. "Item, al alright. H Hoshiko-chan. SS sorry to W worry, YYU." She shrugs and resumes playing with his old, All Might figurines. He gave them to her a while ago after deciding that he was, in fact, no longer a fan of All Mights. He lets her borrow his limited collection of other hero figures, such as Backdraft and Endeavor, from time to time. Izuku drags a weary hand down his face and decides he's done with school work for the day. He sits next to Hoshiko on the floor, watching her make the two figurines battle one another. He pictures the heroes fighting in real life to distract from his thoughts. He leans his head on the back of the wall to close his eyes and pictures the fight between Backdraft and Endeavor, internally chuckling at the image of Backdraft dousing Endeavor's flames. I wonder if the mustache is real. Izuku is woken up with a slap to the face. His cheek burns, and he flinches hard into the wall behind him, thunking the back of his head. I can't believe you, Izuku. Honestly, what were you thinking? You went asleep while Hoshiko was playing with dangerous toys that you gave her. His mother signs. It pains me to think about what might have happened had I not come in to check on you both. She puts on a false, concerned look while holding her own cheek and grinning at him. Izuku's mother continues to shout at him until his father comes in to check out the commotion. What's going on in here? Izuku fell asleep while watching Hoshiko. What if she'd gotten herself hurt? His mother wails. Izuku really isn't in the mood to listen to his parents yelling right now. He hadn't meant to fall asleep, and even if he did, Hoshiko was fine. She'd learned long ago not to stick anything in her mouth, and to tell someone if she has a boo-boo. Looking at the girl in question, she seems more upset by their parents interrupting her playtime and Izuku's nap more than anything else. He knows his parents don't care, but he wishes they'd just admit what they're actually thinking. They hate me. Inko, take Hoshiko outside. I need to show Izuku what could have happened if you hadn't intervened. His father glares at him with those icy, pale eyes. Izuku knows his father wouldn't be easily satisfied with whatever punishment he gives Izuku. He spares a glance at Hoshiko and gives her his most reassuring smile. He knows he probably won't see her until tomorrow. He has to pay for his actions after all. He always has to, it's only right. However, what is coming for Izuku he never could imagine. The tension in the room spikes the second his bedroom door clicks shut. He draws as far back as possible in fear of the man looming over him. He flinches as his father slowly raises his hand towards his waist. A knowing fear courses through Izuku's veins as he thinks the man is readying his belt to whip him. It's a reasonable guess considering the past, but fear turns to confusion when his father reaches into his pocket, bringing out something wrapped in a cloth. Only when he unfolds it does Izuku realize the item in question is far worse than a belt buckle. It's a pocket knife. His body freezes in place. His eyes go wide, and his blood feels like it stops moving through his body, accepting his fate for him before he's even given the chance to react. His father has never used an actual weapon before. Is he going to kill Izuku this time? He is to get out. He never should have come back last night. Why did he squash his chance at freedom? But what would happen to Hoshiko? Sure, she has it easier with her quirk, but that doesn't mean she is safe. I still need to protect her from Dash. He flinches violently as his father takes a heavy step forward, breaking the silence that fills the room. Quit that mumbling before I rip out your tongue. Izuku's jaw snaps shut, and he covers his mouth in a vain attempt to save himself from the added pain. Izuku, you know this isn't how you treat your father with respect, he says, spitting out the tea. Or, do you still not understand our rules? Maybe I should refresh your memory. Izuku hates the closet. It's so dark. So lonely. Today serves to fuel his depressing thoughts. He can feel the burning sensation of air grazing the cuts around his face and arms. It's nothing compared to his saliva mixing with that awful taste of copper he's come to know so well. Tears and blood stain his clothing as he rips a piece of his shirt off to jam in his mouth. He hopes it's enough to stop the seemingly endless bleeding from the now painfully empty space of his mouth. The cuts on each side of his lips stretch and tear as he stuffs the fabric into his mouth, doing his best to add pressure like he'd be taught in his previous life. A headache forms in his skull that sends pain barreling through his eyes like daggers. Blood trickles down his face. A small amount trails its way into his eye, forcing him to close it against the itching sensation. He doesn't even try to keep his blood from hitting the carpet. He can't hardly think past all the pain and oozing blood, but forces his mind to drift to keep it from centering around his agony.
How old am I?
Obviously, his physical body is 10, but at some point his mental and physical ages combine themselves, making Izuku lose track. He has the mental capacity of his teenage self, but doesn't have much control over his emotions, which makes him act like a young boy. Though if he's counting the number of years he's been alive, that would be roughly 25. The thoughts give Izuku something to distract himself with as his body settles from the adrenaline and pain. Eventually, his body becomes so exhausted that he has no choice but to lie down and try to fall asleep. It's far from comfortable. The small closet feels even smaller than ever. He's just barely able to curl in on himself enough to form a ball on the floor. His side protests the position by pulling at the slices in the flesh around his ribs. As he continues to use thoughts to distract himself, he thinks about the kind man from the convenience store. He'd been so nice to offer Izuku that food, and even had some for him to eat tonight that will surely go to waste without him there to collect it. As much as Izuku wants a warm meal for his stomach, he doesn't think he can eat anything for a while after night. The thought of burning his mouth on top of losing his tongue makes Izuku lose all appetite he might have had. When this is all over, Izuku thinks he should visit the man to at least apologize for not coming back tonight. The more Izuku thinks about the future, the more his determination to flee is set in his heart. If he makes it out alive, then he'll take Hoshiko out of his window to freedom. He's not sure how much blood he's lost. All he can do is hope he survives to get out of this hell house. All he can do now is hope that when he falls asleep, he'll wake up. Izuku takes out the blood-soaked cloth from his mouth. It helps slow the bleeding, but Izuku can still feel gravity pooling the blood into his cheek. He rolls more onto his stomach to let the blood pour out of his mouth, and does his best to fall asleep for as long as he can. He wakes several times throughout the night as wounds reopen or start throbbing too much to ignore. He can feel the blood drying on the surface of his skin, along his lips and down his throat. His entire being is screaming in pain from starvation and thirst, but he makes it through the night. He hears his parents get up and around for the day. He listens as his father leaves for work. Mother stays home like normal. Usually, she lets him out after an hour or two because she doesn't like watching over Hoshiko by herself, but today is different. She sits in the living room watching one of her TV dramas. Meanwhile, he can faintly hear the scribbling of crayons on paper that tells him Hoshiko is up and in the living room. Izuku is uncertain how much time has passed, but he assumes it's around the time he'd normally be free from this prison cell. However, when he hears his father come home from work, he realizes that his parents are planning to keep him trapped in this small space for longer than ever before. They want him to suffer. At the very least, he can't taste metal anymore. The dried flakes of red dust coating his skin are like ashes from a flame. If it's from his burning hatred or his sister's pyrokinesis training, he hasn't got a clue. Footsteps walk past his cage for the first time in a few hours. He wishes they'd set him free. Alas, they walk past as if he isn't clinging to the edge of life. His lips are crusting from dehydration and tears and blood. His ribcage is more prominent than usual, but he'll survive. He's spent years starving. What's a little extra hunger now? His wounds dig deep into soft, unforgiving flesh. Every movement, every flinching thought, rips them further open. No way in hell these aren't going to scar once he gets them healed. On the bright side, he hadn't bled out in this darkness all alone. He has to admit the thought crossed his mind a few times in the past. How long have I been in here again? The thought brings him back to reality. Starting into the abyss, squinting with eyes that are encased by the red blood. He's not exactly sure how long he's been in here this time. He knows the quiet sounds of nightly routines have come and gone a few times, but the number escapes his grasp. Imagining the span of time reminds his stomach of its own issues. With his weak figure, it doesn't take long for him to break down his body's small reserves of fat. He's eternally grateful he decided to eat those pork buns before he got home rather than after. He's not sure when his next meal will be, even if his parents take mercy on him and set him free. How does one even eat without half their tongue? He slowly mimics the movements of chewing, careful not to rub on the flimsy scab he'd gotten to form. It's definitely different having so much space in his mouth. He can still swallow, but he doubts chewing will be on his list of capabilities. He's so hungry. He wants to think about something else, anything else, but it's a great distraction from his other pains that he's forced to pick his battle. His head leans against the wall without a thunk, but even the gentle motion is enough to send a shiver of pain flying down his neck. He's so tired. They stopped. His eyes open barely a sliver more than they have in days, as he hears someone on the other side of his cage sifting through keys. A key scrapes against the other side of the door handle. His heart sinks when there is no click of the lock opening until… Sheet. A voice. One Izuku's never heard before. He opens his mouth to speak despite how awful he knows his stutter will be. No solid words form. Instead, a strange noise leaves his chapped lips. He'd forgotten his current condition. The noise is coarse and unshaped, a mangle of sounds. It's barely even comprehensible, only a tense vibration of his vocal cords, but it's enough. The keys outside the door stop clanking around. Izuku hears some commotion in the living room that he hadn't noticed until now. His mother's voice is being led out of the house. He's not sure what she's saying. He can barely process what's happening right outside the door as the unknown voice speaks up again, clearer than before. "Can you hear me? Are you really in there? Say something if you're still here, kid, please." Tears clean a path down Izuku's freckled cheeks. Someone has come for him. How did they know he was here? A strangled noise crawls out from his throat, tearing at his cuts and scabs, grabbing a hold of his throat, so tight it feels like his head is going to explode. "Thank you," the stranger replies, sounding on the verge of tears himself. "Hold on a little longer, okay? I'm going to get you out. You're okay. It's okay, you're safe now." It's all Izuku can do to cry harder at the stranger's words until the door finally opens with a click. Izuku stares up in shock at the frozen hero standing in front of him. The man's eyes are covered by a visor with a white plastic lining around his face. Black hair sticks out from behind the strange helmet, and his red vest contains a yellow patch with something akin to a cat embroidered on it. The hero analyzes Izuku and moves slowly to sit on his knees in the hallway. He moves slowly, taking off his helmet and setting it on the floor next to him in broadcasted movements. "It's okay," the hero coaxes at him. "I'm here to help you. Do you want to come out of there for me?" Izuku takes in his own actions. He's pressed reflexively against the back wall. One of his hands clenched against his chest, and the other covers his mouth. With the bright light shining in, he can see where his blood was smeared across the carpet and left to dry. He's trembling and coated in bruises. His shirt is torn, and the missing piece rests beside him on the floor, bloodied and discarded. "My name is Water Hose. Would you like to tell me yours?" Izuku scans his face. A tense smile covers his face. It doesn't reach his chocolate-colored eyes, but the slight quiver of his smile and the furrow of his brows show Izuku how concerned the hero is. Izuku trusts this man, but he can't exactly tell him his name. He lets out a small sob at the heart-clenching thought of what that spells for his future. Spells. He thinks of an idea, but he can't be sure it'll work. Slowly unfurling a trembling hand from his crusty lips, he signs, "I," by raising his pinky and closing his other fingers in a fist. Izuku hopes he remembers how to spell his name in JSL. In his past life, he'd only had one lesson where everyone learned the alphabet. The hero sat in front of him, thankfully picks up on the hint, and motions for Izuku to continue. He remembers the next hand sign, Su, but he can't remember what pairs with it to make Zu. He thinks for a moment, but only draws a blank. "You don't know signs, do you?" the hero asks, fluently signing the words as he speaks. Izuku's never met someone so fluent before. He'd be excitedly asking so many questions in any other circumstance. He resigns with a sigh through his nose and shakes his head at the hero's question. "But you can hear?" he asks, without the signs this time. He nods. "I don't have a pen and paper for you to write on, but I might have an alternative." Izuku tilts himself forward enough to see the hero reaching out towards the bathroom. Slowly, a puddle of water snakes its way through the air until it's right in front of Izuku. It takes all his courage not to take a bite from the floating liquid. His mouth is suddenly drier than he had initially thought. "Can you spell your name slowly for me? I'll trace it with the water, so it's visible. How's that sound?" the hero says without any signs this time. Izuku nods enthusiastically, If he can't pose questions about the hero's quirk, he can at least show his excitement at the man's idea and quirk control. The hero's smile softens, becoming more relaxed on his face. The man forms the letter I for him to start with. Is this right? Izuku nods, confirming the first letter, and brings a finger up to draw the next letter. I get it. Zoo. The hero brightens. You weren't sure how to sign it earlier. That makes sense, it's tricky. Izuku nods again. He's happy to be understood. He moves on to the next letter forming ku in the air. Izuku. The greenette nods. That's it? Izuku. He nods again. It's a pleasure to meet you, Izuku. What do you say we get you out of here? Izuku watches the pain sink back into the hero's gaze. He looks over Izuku's injuries again. Izuku shakes his head no at the hero. He lets the worry show on his face for a lack of words. He needs to find Hoshiko. He needs to know she's safe too. He can't just leave her here. It's alright. You have my word your parents won't be able to reach you again, okay? The hero tries to coax him. It doesn't work. Izuku shakes his head again, but he loses patience when the hero tries to calm him again. He stands up slowly, leaning heavily against the wall, before pushing past the man and sprinting down the hallway towards his sister's bedroom. He doesn't make it more than 2 steps before he trips over himself and falls to the floor on hands and knees. A spark of pain shoots through him like lightning and stretches his wounds. A cry of pain pours from his lungs as he reaches out for the door leading to her room. It's right next to his, at the very end of the hallway. The bathroom and training room stand on opposite sides of him. He tries calling her name, but the word turns to mush in his mouth no matter how many times he calls it. Biri. N2-4. UT-23. In 3-4. Out 2-3-4. Izuku gently comes around to the water hero sitting in front of him, demonstrating breathing exercises. Hey Izuku, you back with me? Blank emerald eyes scan his surroundings slowly. He nods his head, feeling the pressure built up in his skull. He's tired, but something in him snaps to attention when he realizes he's still in the hallway. The hero catches him staring at Hoshiko's room. Is there something you need in there? He asks patiently. Izuku analyzes the hero again. He looks almost petrified of something, but Izuku can't place his mind on it. He nods in a silent request to get help walking to the room. Okay, we'll get it. There's no need to worry. We'll leave whenever you are ready. No rush. Izuku smiles a little at that. It's been a while since someone was so kind to him. The last time he remembers this kindness was from his mom. Not the Inko from this life, but the one he knows loved him. He loves Hoshiko, but she isn't old enough to understand others' needs yet. The sentiment of it all hits him, and he swipes at a tear that rolls down his cheek. The hero helps him to the room and opens the door for him to enter. When Izuku walks in, he doesn't see her anywhere. He checks his room next, silently guiding the hero to open the door at the end of the hall. He searches there but still no Hoshiko. He almost makes to move towards the training room before stopping for a spare notebook and pen from his desk. He frantically flips to a blank page and writes out his thoughts. Where is Hoshiko? Oh, the hero exclaims. You're looking for your sister, correct? Izuku nods. She's the one who alerted us to the issue, he settles on. Don't worry, Izuku, she's safe. Neither of you will be returning to your parents' custody. Izuku sighs in relief. He's glad she's unharmed. He writes out another note to the hero. Thank Y. A squiggle traces across the page as Izuku's body gives out beneath him. His legs buckle and drop to the floor with a thunk. His name is called out, and he can feel hands steadily holding his shoulders upright to keep him from falling over. It does nothing to stop his vision from blurring into the darkness.